Hunger. My own blood mixed with tears streaming down my face while my son laughed and kicked me, thinking I was pretending. That moment burned into my soul like a hot iron brands cattle. My name is Joseph August Peterson. I'm 73 years old, retired after 35 years breaking my back as a metalworker at Midwest Steel Manufacturing in the Gary, Indiana region. I was born in Appalachia, Kentucky, but came to the industrial Midwest as a young man of 19, escaping poverty and seeking a better life. My face is marked by time, with deep wrinkles that tell every story of sweat shed to give the best to my family. My calloused hands and crooked fingers from years of tightening bolts and welding steel show I was never afraid of hard work. I worked my whole life without complaint, waking at 4 a.m. to catch the crowded bus, returning only after the sun had long gone down. Holidays meant nothing. I took overtime whenever possible. Christmas, New Year's, the kids' birthdays. I missed many family moments to ensure food was on the table. My late wife Martha, God rest her soul, complained that I lived more at the factory than at home, but it was all for them, all for our children. Marcus, my youngest, was always the most spoiled. His mother doted on him and so did I. What could I do? I saved every penny, kept everything I could thinking about the future. I built a simple but decent house with great sacrifice, bought brick by brick, cement bag by bag. Raised wall by wall with the help of friends on weekends, all to leave something of value for my children when I passed. Before continuing this story, I'd like to thank the Grandpa's Tales channel for allowing me to share what I went through. It's not easy to talk about all this, but maybe it'll help someone avoid going through the same thing. And I ask you watching to subscribe to the channel, leave your like, comment where you're watching from and what time it is there. Every day there's a new story here from people like me who have lived a lot and have something to teach. But getting back to what I was telling you, I never imagined my own blood would be capable of what he did to me. Never thought I'd experience hunger under the same roof I built with so much sacrifice. How can anyone imagine they'll faint from weakness and hear their own son's laughter? I was born in the Appalachian Mountains of Kentucky in 1953. Good land, but hardened by poverty. My father, Robert, worked in the coal mines when there was work. My mother, Mary, took in laundry and cared for me and my 5 siblings. Our home had a dirt floor, no electricity, water only from the well, which dried up in the hardest times. I studied until 4th grade in a small rural school where Miss Betty taught all grades together in one room. I learned to read, write, and do arithmetic, but what I really learned was the value of hard work. By 12, I was already helping my father in whatever odd jobs he could find. The recession of '72 was brutal. I lost my father that year to black lung disease after spending years in the mines without proper protection. That's when I decided I needed to seek a better life. At 19, I took a Greyhound bus to Indiana, with one change of clothes in a paper bag and $20 in my pocket, money my mother saved selling eggs. I cried holding her during our goodbye, knowing we might never see each other again, and we didn't. She passed 3 years later without me being able to return to see her one last time. When I arrived in Gary, I slept 2 weeks at the bus station until I found a corner in the apartment of a fellow Kentuckian in the steel town. I started as a construction laborer, carrying cement bags on my back all day. Then I became a helper at a small metalworking shop, where Old Man Sullivan, as we called the owner, saw I had a knack for it and taught me to operate the lathe. That was my school. I learned everything about metal, welding, measurements, calibration. After 3 years, I managed to get hired at Midwest Steel, where I stayed until retirement. I worked in the foundry section. The heat was unbearable, those furnaces at over 1,000 degrees. We sweated in thick special clothes that protected from the heat, but made us sweat like pigs at slaughter. I'd arrive home smelling of burnt metal, skin black with soot, eyes red from the smoke. The noise was deafening, hammering, machines grinding metal against metal. To this day I have a ringing in my ears that never stops, a consequence of all those years. But I never complained. It was honest work, paid the bills. My routine was always the same. Wake at 3:30 a.m., heat coffee on the wood stove. Later I managed to buy a small gas stove, catch the first bus at 4:15, reach the factory at 5:30, Punch in at 6 o'clock sharp, work until 4 p.m., sometimes staying until 8 p.m. when there was overtime. Return home, take a shower to remove that black crust from my body, eat whatever Martha had left and fall into bed dead tired. The next day, the same struggle. I met my Martha at a community dance in Gary. She was also from Kentucky, but from a town over from mine. A beautiful, hard-working, serious woman. We dated for 6 months and married in a simple ceremony, just with our closest friends. We rented a small room at the back of an elderly lady's house and saved every penny to buy our own place. 2 years later, our first daughter Angela was born. Then came Carl Edward and finally Marcus. With the children's arrival, the struggle got harder. Martha stopped working as a domestic helper to care for the kids, so everything depended on my salary. That's when I started doing side jobs on weekends, fixing gates, railings, doing welding in neighborhood workshops. I slept only 4 or 5 hours a night, but didn't complain. It was for them, for my children. The sacrifices were many. I remember once when Carl Edward needed expensive dental treatment. I sold my wristwatch, a gift from my father before he died. Another time, Angela needed school supplies, and I went without lunch for a month to save money. For Marcus, who was always the neediest, Martha and I did everything. When he wanted to take a technical business administration course, I worked overtime for 6 straight months to pay the tuition. I never complained. Children are worth it, right? We sacrifice. With great effort, I managed to buy a small plot of land in Hammond, a more affordable area. For 2 years, every weekend I went there to build. I bought materials little by little, a bag of cement here, some bricks there. Factory friends sometimes helped in exchange for a barbecue and some beers. I first built 2 rooms and a bathroom, then gradually expanded. In the end, I had a 5-room house, living room, kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and bathroom. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours, with a deed and everything. Plus, I was smart. Since I had worked on small farms before coming to Indiana, I managed to also get a small rural work pension. Few people knew, but I had 2 retirement checks, $3,200 from the factory and a rural pension of $1,000. I always saved that extra money in a separate savings account without telling anyone, not even Martha. It was my security for old age, so I wouldn't depend on my children. The kids grew up. Angela got married and moved to Indianapolis with her husband. Carl Edward found work in Cincinnati and started a family there. Marcus stayed with us. He was always the most attached, or so I thought. Life followed its normal course until 8 years ago, when I lost my Martha to aggressive breast cancer. She fought for 2 years, but God wanted it that way. I stayed alone in that house with memories and longing. That's when I started noticing changes in Marcus. After his mother passed, he became more distant, colder. He'd come by occasionally, but only to ask for money he never returned. He said it was for business, for investments, but I suspected it was for partying. Still, I helped after all. He was my youngest son. About 2 years ago, Marcus showed up at my house on a Sunday afternoon. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was in the backyard, tending to my plants. After Martha left us, plants became my companions. He arrived looking downcast, with a backpack on his shoulders and that hangdog look. He sat on the wooden bench I'd made myself and stayed silent for a while, just looking at the ground. "What's wrong, son? Did something happen?" I asked, setting aside the hose I was using to water my plum tree. "Dad, I lost my job," he said, his voice breaking. "The company closed down. They let everyone go. I've been looking for 2 months, but nothing's come up. And now my landlord is pressuring me. I'm behind on rent." I felt my heart tighten. A child is a child, right? Even though he was already 43, to me he'd always be that boy I carried in my arms. "And are you paying your child support?" I asked, concerned about my grandchildren he had with his ex-wife, Denise. "I'm trying, Dad, but without a job, it's difficult." He avoided eye contact when answering, which made me suspicious. "And what do you plan to do?" I asked, already imagining where that conversation was heading. That's when he asked me. "Dad, let me stay here at home for a while, just until I find a new job and get back on my feet. I promise I won't be any trouble." I confess I hesitated. Marcus had always been somewhat irresponsible, a spendthrift. But how could I deny shelter to my own son? Of course you can, son. The house is yours too, I replied. I saw his eyes shine with relief, and he hugged me tightly. At that moment, I felt I was doing the right thing. The first few days went well. He woke up early, said he was going to distribute his resume, returned late afternoon tired. We shared meals. He even helped with the dishes. It was like going back in time, having my youngest back home. At night, we watched the news and some shows together, like in the old days when Martha was still with us. You know, Dad, it's good to be home again, he told me on one of those nights, while we were eating rice and beans with steak that I had prepared myself. You cook almost as well as Mom. That filled my heart with joy. Widowed, living alone, one misses having family around. I thought that perhaps after everything, Marcus had matured, learned the value of things, how wrong I was. It was at the end of the first month that things started to change. It was the day to receive my retirement check, the one he knew about, from the factory. I was in my room arranging some things when he appeared at the door. Dad, let me borrow your card. I need to buy some things for lunch. The fridge is empty, he asked, scratching his head. No need, son. After lunch, we'll go to the store together, I replied. He insisted. It's just that I wanted to go now to take advantage of a sale, and you seem tired. Why don't you rest? I'll handle this quickly. I ended up giving in. I handed him the card and PIN, asking him to bring back the receipt. He left saying he'd be back soon. He returned only at night without any grocery bags, saying the sale had already ended, but that he had bought a few things at a small market that would deliver later. The receipt never appeared. In the second month, the approach was different. Dad, we need to pay the bills. Let me go to the bank to withdraw money from your retirement for us to settle everything, he said, without even asking for the card. He already had it in his hand. How much are you going to withdraw? I asked suspiciously. Oh, the full amount. I have to pay water, electricity, buy food for the month, and I still have your medication, he responded naturally. But son, there's no need to take it all. Let's organize how much we spend on each thing, I tried to argue. He got angry. Are you doubting me, Dad? You think I'm going to take your money? Is that it? He shouted, pounding on the table. It's not that, son. I just want to know where the money's going, I replied, frightened by his reaction. I handle the bills now. You're already old, you might get confused. Let me handle it, he said, in a tone that didn't allow for contestation. That day he came back smelling of alcohol. The bills kept coming with late notices. When I questioned, he said he had set up payment plans, that everything was under control. I began to realize something was wrong. In the third month, he didn't even tell me. He simply went to the bank on payday and withdrew everything. When I complained, he threw $200 on the table. Here's for your expenses. I'll manage the rest, he said disdainfully. But son, it's my retirement. How will you spend over $3,000 by yourself? I asked incredulously. You don't know how expensive things are these days. I have my expenses too. I need to keep myself presentable for job interviews, he answered, running his hand through his well-cut hair. That's when I began to notice the pattern. He was always well-dressed in new clothes. His phone was the latest model. He frequently went out at night and returned in the early hours, sometimes bringing the smell of alcohol and women's perfume. Meanwhile, the pantry was emptying, and the bills continued to be late. The money I received dwindled more and more. In the fourth month, he gave me only $100. Dad, things are tight. I had to pay some old debts, he justified. In the fifth month, I received nothing, zero. When I asked about the money, he exploded. What money? You think I'm swimming in money? It barely covers the bills and I still have to put up with your nagging, he shouted, slamming the door as he left. That's when I realized I was trapped. My own son was robbing me, and I had no way to prove it. The card was with him, the PIN too. I was completely dependent on him for everything. The food in the pantry started running out. First, the items I liked, meat, fruit, chocolate cookies, which were my weakness. Then the basics, rice, beans, pasta. The refrigerator that once was full with groceries I myself bought now had only leftovers of food he brought from outside. Son, I need to go to the doctor to get my blood pressure medicine, I asked one morning. I'll go later, Dad, not today, he replied without taking his eyes off his phone. But it ran out yesterday, son. I can't go without taking it, I insisted. Stop being dramatic. One day, without medicine, won't kill anyone, he replied irritably. It was 3 weeks without my blood pressure medication. I started feeling dizzy, constant headaches. When I complained, he said it was all in my head, that I wanted attention. One day I found some receipts in the pocket of a pair of his pants I was going to wash. Expenses at bars, an online gaming store, shopping at the mall. Meanwhile, I barely had anything to eat. When I confronted him, the reaction was violent. "You've been going through my stuff. Who gave you that right?" he yelled, snatching the papers from my hand. "That's an invasion of privacy." "Son, you're spending all my money on nonsense while I go without necessities," I said, feeling my eyes fill with tears. "Your money is our money. I'm your son, I have a right, and I don't see anyone going without here. Roof, food, it's all there," he pointed around. "You're just spoiled. That's what it is." That was the first time he pushed me. It wasn't hard, but enough to make me fall back onto the sofa. The shock wasn't physical, but emotional. My son, my youngest, was assaulting me. That night, I cried, hugging my pillow so he wouldn't hear. I cried for Martha, who, if alive, would never allow this. I cried for my other children, so distant they didn't know what I was going through. I cried for myself, a foolish old man who was now a prisoner in his own home. The situation quickly worsened from there. The refrigerator was completely empty. Marcus ate out and brought nothing home. When I complained of hunger, he responded, "There's rice there. Figure it out." Later, not even rice remained. I found an expired package of crackers at the back of the cupboard, one of those you save and forget. It was my food for 2 days. On a Tuesday, I'll never forget, he ordered a huge pizza. The smell invaded the house. My stomach growled with hunger. When I tried to take a piece, he pulled the box away. "Don't touch it, this is my lunch," he said with his mouth full. "There's no money left for you, Dad." My eyes filled with tears, not from sadness, but from indignation. How could my own son eat in front of me while I went hungry? I remembered how many times I'd gone without eating to give him the best plate when he was a child, how many times I'd skipped lunch at work to save money and buy the brand-name sneakers he wanted so badly. Now he was denying me a slice of pizza. On Wednesday, I ate absolutely nothing, just tap water, and even that with difficulty, because I felt too weak to get up from my room. The dizziness was constant. My vision would darken when I tried to stand. I felt my body consuming itself. My ribs were already showing under my skin. I, who had always been a strong man of 143 pounds, must have been less than 99. On Thursday, I couldn't even get out of bed. My blood pressure must have been extremely low. I called for Marcus in a weak voice. He appeared at the door, irritated at being interrupted in whatever he was doing. "What is it now?" he asked impatiently. "Son, for the love of God, buy some bread." "I can't stand the hunger anymore," I begged with trembling hands. He looked at me with contempt. "Stop being dramatic, old man. I already told you there's no money. Next month we'll figure it out." "But I won't make it until then, son. I'm feeling ill," I murmured. "You were always strong enough to work. Now you're lying there pretending to be weak. Get up from that bed, you lazy bum," he shouted, slamming the door as he left. At that moment, something broke inside me. It wasn't just the physical hunger consuming me, but a pain in my soul. How could my own flesh and blood treat me like this? The boy I carried in my arms, whom I taught to walk, whom I defended from fights at school, now called me lazy while I was wasting away from hunger. On Friday, I gathered my last strength and tried to reach the kitchen. Maybe there was something, anything to eat. I dragged myself along, supporting myself against the walls, my shaky legs barely holding my weakened body. When I reached the living room, my vision darkened. I felt my body collapse. The last thing I felt was my head hitting hard on the corner of the coffee table. Then darkness. I don't know how long I was unconscious, but when I regained awareness, I was still lying on the floor. I felt something warm and viscous running down my temple. Blood. I tried to move, but couldn't. My body simply wouldn't respond, though I was conscious. I heard footsteps. It was Marcus entering the living room. I saw his feet stop near me. Then he crouched down. His eyes scanned my fallen body, the blood on the floor. For a brief moment, I thought I saw concern on his face. "Is he dead?" he muttered to himself, and I felt a tightness in my chest hearing that. He checked my breathing, placing his hand near my nose, and then happened what I can never forget or forgive. He laughed, a loud, mocking laugh. "This old man is just being dramatic," he exclaimed, still laughing. "He's pretending to move me." He nudged me with his foot, not forcefully, but with disdain. "Get up, actor. I'm not falling for this." I was conscious. I heard everything, felt everything. Tears began to flow from my eyes, mixing with the blood streaming from the head wound. My son was laughing at my misery, thinking I was pretending when in fact I was slowly dying from hunger and weakness. It was at this moment that I heard knocks at the door. A female voice called my name. "Joseph, Joseph, I haven't seen you for days. Is everything all right?" It was Mrs. Wilson, my neighbor for over 20 years, a kind lady who always came over for coffee after Martha passed away. Marcus cursed under his breath. "Nosy old woman," he muttered, ignoring the knocking. Mrs. Wilson continued calling. After a while, I heard her say something about looking through the window. There was a muffled scream. She had seen me fallen. "Oh my God, Joseph, is someone there? Help!" She was screaming now, banging on the door harder. Marcus seemed paralyzed, not knowing what to do. Mrs. Wilson continued screaming for help, and soon other voices joined hers. Neighbors came to see what was happening. "I'm calling an ambulance," I heard someone say. "Break down that door," shouted another. That's when Marcus finally reacted. He opened the door, pretending to be desperate. "Thank God you're here. My father fell. I don't know what happened," he said in an acting performance worthy of Hollywood, but Mrs. Wilson wasn't fooled. She entered like a hurricane, kneeled beside me. "Joseph, my God, what have they done to you?" she whispered, horrified by my condition. The ambulance arrived in less than 15 minutes. The paramedics were shocked when they saw me. "He's severely malnourished," I heard one of them say. "How much does he weigh normally?" "About 143 pounds, Marcus replied nervously. "He can't be more than 92 now," said the paramedic, shaking his head, "and he has head trauma. We need to take him immediately." As they were putting me on the stretcher, I heard Mrs. Wilson confronting Marcus. "How did you let your father get in this state? Look how thin he is. How long has he gone without proper food?" "He eats, ma'am. It's just that he's been a bit depressed, doesn't want to eat," Marcus tried to justify. "Depressed? He's dying of hunger," Mrs. Wilson shouted. "And this blood? What happened?" "He fell. I already said that," Marcus replied irritably. I was taken to the hospital semi-conscious. I remember flashes of the ambulance ride, the noise of sirens, lights passing by. At the hospital I went straight to emergency. They applied an IV, ran tests, cleaned the wound on my head. A young female doctor with kind eyes held my hand. "Mr. Joseph, you're safe now. We're going to take care of you," she said in a gentle voice. Later, when I was feeling a bit better, this same doctor entered the room with a serious expression. Beside her was a woman who introduced herself as a social worker. "Mr. Joseph, we need to talk about what happened to you," said the social worker. "You're in a serious state of malnutrition and dehydration. The doctor said that 24 more hours in those conditions, and you could have died." I felt a lump in my throat. It was hard to believe I had come so close to death. "There are signs of neglect and possible abuse," she continued. "Do you live with someone?" "With my son," I replied in a weak voice. "And he knew about your condition? He didn't provide food for you?" It was then that I told everything, like a dammed river that finally breaks the barrier. I let the words flow. I told about Marcus asking to live with me, how he took control of my card, about the money that disappeared, about the hunger I suffered. I told about the verbal abuse, about the push, about him laughing when he saw me fallen. The two women listened in silence, eyes wide with horror. "We'll contact the police immediately," said the social worker when I finished. "What you suffered is a crime, abandonment of an incapable person, embezzlement, elder abuse." "I don't want to harm my son," I began to say, still with that paternal instinct to protect. "Mr. Joseph," the doctor gently interrupted, "what your son did isn't just wrong, it's criminal. He almost starved you to death. If your neighbor hadn't called for help, you wouldn't be here now." At that moment, something strengthened inside me. It wasn't just about me anymore, but about justice, about not allowing Marcus to do this to others, perhaps to his own children someday, about showing that actions have consequences. "All right," I agreed. "I'll file a complaint." That same night, a police officer came to take my statement. I told everything again, not omitting any details. He wrote it down, shaking his head in disbelief. "And where is your son now?" he asked. "Probably at home." "My home," I replied bitterly. "We'll locate him," said the police officer. "Do you have other family members we can contact?" That's when I remembered my sister Cecilia, who lived in Evanston. We got lucky. She still had the same phone number. Less than 2 hours later, she arrived at the hospital, her eyes red from crying. "My God, Joseph, how could he do this to you?" she sobbed, holding my hand. Looking at my sister, so concerned, so genuinely horrified at what had happened, I felt a determination grow inside me. It wasn't just about surviving now, but about justice. And I knew exactly what I needed to do. While still in the hospital, I asked the nurse for a special favor. "Miss, I need you to call my sister and ask her to go to the bank urgently," I said, in a voice still weak but determined. The young nurse, Camilla was her name, looked at me sympathetically. "Of course, mister." "Joseph, what should I ask her to do?" "Ask her to go to First National Bank on Main Street. I sent her a power of attorney a few years ago, after my Martha passed away. Everything is in order. Ask her to cancel the card that's with my son, Marcus, and issue a new one. And I also need her to check the statement of my savings account, the one nobody knows about." The nurse nodded and made the call. My sister Cecilia didn't understand everything at first, but promised to do what I asked. Meanwhile, I was trying to regain my strength. The doctors said I was responding well to treatment, but that I would need time to fully recover from the malnutrition. My weight had dropped to 92 pounds, I, who had always been a strong man, of 143 pounds. On the third day of hospitalization, I received a visit I wasn't expecting, Marcus. He entered the room as if nothing had happened, with a fake smile and a package of cookies in his hand, the same person who had denied me food for so long. "Hey, Dad, how are you feeling?" he asked, trying to sound concerned. I looked at him and no longer recognized my son. I saw only a stranger, a man who had almost starved me to death and then laughed at my misfortune. I didn't respond. "I brought some cookies for you, the kind you like," he said, placing the package on the small table beside the bed. The cynicism was so great it almost made me laugh, but there was no humor in the situation, only a deep sadness and a growing determination. "Why did you do this to me, Marcus?" I finally asked with a weak but firm voice. He pretended not to understand. "Do what, Dad? I didn't do anything. You fell, had an accident. Don't lie to me." I raised my voice as much as I could. "You robbed me, took all my money. Let me go hungry in my own house, the house I built with the sweat of my labor." He changed his expression, becoming defensive. "What an exaggeration, Dad. You've always been dramatic. I managed our money the way I could. Things are expensive. Expensive for me who had nothing to eat, but not for you, who bought new clothes, expensive phones, and ordered pizza," I retorted, feeling the indignation grow. "I saw the statements, Marcus. I know where you spent my money." At that moment, the door to the room opened. 2 police officers entered, accompanied by the social worker and a man in a suit who introduced himself as a detective. "Marcus Peterson?" asked the detective. My son turned pale. "Yes, that's me." "What's going on?" "You're being detained for questioning on suspicion of elder abuse, embezzlement, abandonment of an incapable person, and attempted homicide by omission," said the detective as one of the officers approached with handcuffs. "What? This is absurd, Dad. Tell them it's not true," Marcus shouted, looking at me in desperation. For a moment, the paternal instinct almost spoke louder. I almost asked the officers to release him, that we would resolve this as a family. But then I remembered my blood mixed with tears on the living room floor, while my son laughed and kicked me, thinking I was pretending. I remembered the nights of hunger, the denied requests for food, the humiliations. "It's all true," I said firmly. "He did all that and more." As the police officers handcuffed Marcus and read him his rights, he shouted that I was ungrateful, that he only wanted to help me, that I was crazy. His shouts echoed down the hall as they took him away. I stayed there alone in the room with a mixture of relief and sadness. This wasn't how I had imagined the end of my relationship with my youngest son. My sister Cecilia returned that afternoon, bringing news that confirmed my suspicions. "Joseph, you won't believe what I discovered," she said, sitting beside my bed. "I requested the statement of your account for the last 8 months. Marcus withdrew everything, every month more than $38,000 in total." I nodded, not completely surprised. "And the other account, the rural pension savings," Cecilia smiled. "Untouched. Thank God the balance is at $45,000. He didn't know about that account, did he?" "No," I replied. "Nobody knew. It was my secret, my guarantee for old age. Not even Martha knew about it. That's when I realized I had an advantage Marcus never imagined. While he thought he was leaving me in misery, I still had resources. While he thought I was completely vulnerable and dependent on him, I had a hidden trump card. Plus, I had another resource my son never considered: friends. The next day I received a visit from Anthony, my old colleague from the steel mill, who was now the manager of the apartment complex where he lived. When he heard what happened, he was outraged. "Joseph, you can count on me for whatever you need," he said, squeezing my hand firmly. "In fact, I have a nephew who's a lawyer who will want to help. He specializes in elder law." Indeed, that same week I met Paul, Anthony's nephew, a young but very competent man who was indignant about my situation. "Mr. Joseph, what happened to you is a crime, and a serious one," he explained. "We're going to file a criminal case and also a civil action to recover the money your son diverted. And there's one more thing," I added. "I want to know what happened to my grandchildren's child support. Marcus is father to 3 children with his ex-wife, Denise. He said he was paying child support, but now I very much doubt it." Paul noted everything and promised to investigate. Meanwhile, I continued recovering in the hospital. Each day I felt a little stronger, both physically and emotionally. The medical team cared for me with affection, especially Dr. Rachel, who had been outraged by my case from the beginning. "Mr. Joseph, you're a warrior," she told me during a visit. "Few would survive what you went through. Your willpower is admirable." After 2 weeks, I was discharged. My sister Cecilia insisted that I live with her temporarily until everything was resolved. I accepted, though with a heavy heart at leaving the house I had built with such sacrifice. Before leaving the hospital, the social worker informed me that Marcus remained detained. The judge had denied the request for bail due to the severity of the charges and the risk he posed to me. "And there's more, Mr. Joseph," she said. "We contacted your son's ex-wife. She confirmed she hasn't received child support for more than a year. She and the children are going through difficulties." That was like an extra stab. Not enough that Marcus had done all this to me, he had also abandoned his own children. I asked for Denise's contact information, determined to meet my grandchildren whom I had barely seen since Marcus separated. With the help of Paul, we developed a complete action plan. First, we gathered all the evidence: bank statements showing the withdrawals, medical reports detailing my state of malnutrition, photos taken at the hospital showing my skeletal body, testimonies from Mrs. Wilson and other neighbors who had noticed my absence, and even the receipts I had found showing where Marcus was spending the money. "With all this, there's no way he can escape," Paul guaranteed. "But there's one more thing we can do to strengthen the case even further." That's when he suggested that I record my testimony on video, telling everything in detail while still bearing the visible marks of suffering. It was difficult, but I did it. I spoke for almost 2 hours, from the moment Marcus appeared asking to live with me to the day I fainted from hunger in the living room. I cried several times during the recording, remembering each humiliation, each night of hunger, each denied request for help. Meanwhile, another discovery made me even more determined to seek justice. Paul got the detailed breakdown of Marcus's spending with my money over the last 8 months: $15,000 on online games and betting, $8,000 on drinks at bars and clubs, $10,000 on food delivery while I was going hungry. The rest on clothes, electronics, and other frivolities. He spent almost $40,000 in 8 months, Mr. Joseph, Paul said indignantly. And look here, he had a car, a 2010 Chevy. That was in his name. We got a court order to seize this vehicle as part of the compensation we're going to request. 3 weeks after my hospital discharge, we scheduled a family meeting at my sister's house. We invited my other children, Angela and Carl Edward, who came from Indianapolis and Cincinnati, respectively. We also invited some nephews and close cousins. It was time for everyone to know the truth. On the day of the meeting, Paul set up a projector in Cecilia's living room. When everyone was present, we first showed the video of my testimony, then the hospital photos showing my state of malnutrition. Finally, the statements detailing where the money had gone. The shock was general. Angela cried uncontrollably. Carl Edward, always more contained, had his fists clenched in anger. "How didn't we notice this, Dad?" Angela asked between sobs. "Why didn't you call us?" "He took my cell phone, daughter," I replied sadly. "Said he was going to fix it and never returned it, and I was ashamed to ask for help, to admit that my own son was treating me this way." "That bastard is going to pay for this," said Carl Edward with a controlled fury I had never seen in him before. "He's already paying," Paul guaranteed, "and he's going to pay even more." That same week I received a call that changed everything. It was Denise, Marcus's ex-wife. "Mr. Joseph, this is Denise. The social worker gave me your number. I don't even know what to say. I'm in shock with what I found out." We arranged to meet the next day. She came with my 3 grandchildren, Gabriel, 12, Sophia, 9, and little Lucas, 6. Beautiful children that I barely knew, because Marcus rarely brought them to visit me after the separation. Denise told me that Marcus hadn't paid child support for more than a year. She worked as a supermarket cashier and could barely support the children. "He always said he had no money, that times were tough," she explained. "But on social media he posted pictures at expensive restaurants wearing brand-name clothes. I knew he was lying, but I never imagined he would go so far as to rob his own father and let him starve." I looked at those children, my grandchildren, blood of my blood, and felt a tenderness I hadn't experienced for a long time. They looked at me curiously, a bit shy, not fully understanding what was happening. "Come here, my angels," I called, opening my arms. After a moment of hesitation, they came to me. I hugged all 3 together, feeling the warmth of those innocent little bodies, also victims of their father's abandonment. "Grandpa is going to help you, I promise." And that's how, amid all that tragedy, I found a new purpose. I would use the money from my secret savings to help Denise and my grandchildren. It wasn't much, but it would be enough to rent a better apartment for them, put the children in a good school, ensure they didn't go through basic necessities like I had. 3 months after my hospitalization, Marcus's trial day arrived. I entered the courthouse in a wheelchair. Not because I needed it, I was well recovered, but Paul suggested it would be important for the jury to see the fragility that the crime had caused me. I wore an old suit that hung loose on my still thin body, despite having regained some pounds. The trial was quick, as the evidence was overwhelming. The prosecutor showed photos of my malnourished state, images of the head wound, medical reports proving I was on the verge of death when found. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," the prosecutor said in his final speech, "what we see here is not just a crime against an elderly person, it's a crime against humanity itself. A son who lets his own father go hungry, who laughs when he sees him fallen and bleeding on the floor, who spends his father's money on games and drinks while the old man who raised him wastes away from starvation, is a crime that transcends the penal code and reaches the core of what makes us human." Mrs. Wilson testified, crying as she recalled how she found me. The hospital doctor confirmed that 24 more hours in those conditions, and I would have died. The social worker detailed the pattern of financial and psychological abuse. The detective described Marcus's coldness when arrested, showing no remorse. When my turn came to testify, I made a point of getting up from the wheelchair and walking to the witness stand, looking directly into my son's eyes. He avoided my gaze, unable to face me. "This man sitting there," I said, pointing to Marcus, "was once my beloved son. The youngest whom I loved, whom I protected, for whom I sacrificed my entire life. When he knocked on my door asking for help, I didn't hesitate to take him in. And how did he repay me? By robbing me, humiliating me, letting me go hungry in my own house. When I fell on the floor, too weak even to get up, with blood running from my head, do you know what he did? He laughed and kicked me, thinking I was pretending. I was conscious. I heard everything, felt everything. Tears mixed with blood on my face as I heard my own son, my youngest, laugh at my misery. I paused, feeling emotion overcome me. I took a deep breath and continued. But the worst wasn't that. The worst was discovering that while I went hungry, he was spending my money on frivolities. While I begged for a piece of bread, he ordered pizza and ate in front of me. And worst of all, while doing this to me, he was also abandoning his own children, my grandchildren, leaving them in need. There is no forgiveness for this. There is no justification. I only ask for justice, not for vengeance, but so that he learns that actions have consequences, and so that no other elderly person goes through what I went through. When I finished, the silence in the room was absolute. I saw several people wiping away tears, including one of the jurors. The judge himself seemed moved. The sentence came quickly and severely. 4 years in prison for elder abuse, 2 years for felony theft, obligation to pay compensation of $100,000, and loss of inheritance rights. The judge also determined that after serving his sentence, Marcus should maintain a minimum distance of 500 yards from me. Upon hearing the sentence, Marcus finally seemed to realize the gravity of what he had done. I saw his face crumble, his eyes fill with tears. Too late, much too late. 2 years have passed since that trial. My life has completely changed, in a way I never imagined. After everything that happened, I sold the house where I lived with Marcus. I couldn't set foot in that place without feeling the ghost of hunger haunting me, without remembering my own blood on the living room floor while my son laughed. Every corner of that house held memories too painful. With the money from the sale and my secret savings, I bought a small but comfortable apartment in the same building where my sister Cecilia lives. 2 bedrooms, living room, kitchen, and a small balcony where I grow some plants. Nothing fancy, but it's my little corner of peace. Most importantly, the refrigerator is always full. I never again felt the desperation of opening the door and finding nothing to eat. The compensation money that Marcus was ordered to pay, part of which came from the forced sale of his car, I used to help Denise and my grandchildren. I rented a better apartment for them near mine and pay for the children's private school. Every Sunday they come to have lunch with me. Gabriel, the oldest, is now 14 and says he wants to be a lawyer to defend people like his grandpa. Sophia, 11, is an artist, always drawing me, and little Lucas, 8, sticks to me like glue. It's funny how life comes full circle. The children Marcus abandoned now call me Dad. The love he rejected, I receive double. As for Marcus, I heard he got out of jail a few months ago after serving part of his sentence. An acquaintance saw him begging for money at a traffic light on Main Street with a sign that read, "Help an abandoned father." The irony of life is painful. Now it's he who knows hunger. Last week, by coincidence, I drove by that same traffic light. I saw a thin man with an unshaven beard, worn clothes, extending his hand to the cars. It was him, my son. For a moment, our eyes met. I saw surprise, shame, and a glimmer of hope in his gaze. I asked my son-in-law, who was driving, to pull over to the shoulder. I got out of the car, walked up to Marcus. He stood still, not knowing how to react. I took out of a bag a home-cooked meal I had prepared for lunch and handed it to him. "I don't let anyone go hungry, not even those who let me," I said simply. I turned around and returned to the car without waiting for a response. In the rearview mirror, I saw him opening the container, eating eagerly, tears running down his face. I don't know if I'll ever be able to completely forgive Marcus. The wound is too deep, but I know I don't want to carry hatred in my heart for the years I have left. I've suffered too much. Now I want to enjoy every day with my grandchildren, with my sister, with friends who proved their worth in difficult times. If there's something I learned from all this, it's that family isn't just blood. Family is those who don't let you go hungry. Hungry for food, for love, for respect. They are those who stand by your side when you need them most, not those who laugh at your misfortune. And I also learned that we should never completely annul ourselves for our children. Love should not mean self-destruction. We need to save a little for ourselves, as I did with that secret savings that ended up saving my life. Today, at 73, I found a peace I thought I would never have again. It's not complete happiness, how could it be after everything? But it's the tranquility of someone who has survived the worst, and now values every small joy. The hug of grandchildren, a plate of hot food, a night of sleep without nightmares, the simple act of opening the refrigerator and finding something to eat. If you've made it this far, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like. Comment where you're watching from and what time it is there. If you truly followed me to the end of this journey, comment the word hunger below. Only those who watched will understand the significance of this word in my life. Thank you to Grandpa's Tales channel for this opportunity to share my story. Maybe the next one will be even more similar to yours. A tight hug from this old man here who learned that no matter how painful the betrayal, it's always possible to start over.